Hey everyone, Hazz here. Today I'll be showing you my Doctor Strange buff. This is a buff that I made a few days ago and I've been wanting to post it just for a few days now, but I had to kind of iron out the numbers and stuff to make sure that he wasn't too underpowered or overpowered, but I think I'm pretty happy with how all his numbers land currently. So let's go into his abilities. So to start off, he has 1500 energy resistance at his base. That's kind of nice. It's not anything massive like Guardian or Mordo, but it is quite nice to have some base energy resistance to deal with just some energy damage. Overall, it's not that high. 1500 is probably around about 15% maybe. So it's not a huge amount, but it's nice enough to where you can, just reduce a bit more damage from energy attacks, but you can't completely ignore energy attacks. It's just a nice reduction. Next up, ability power rate cannot be decreased. So this includes stuff like exhaustion and wither. It means that nodes that would cause like a reversal in power gain, it's not going to happen for him, or a reduction in power gain, it's just not going to happen. His combat power rate can still be reduced and reversed and stuff, but his ability power rate, his natural power gain that he gets, and any sort of power gain and other stuff from nodes and such, that cannot be decreased, which is quite nice to have. Additionally, his nullify, stagger, and fate seal effects are unaffected by ability accuracy. So this means that his ways in which he can remove buffs are just more reliable and consistent, which is fantastic. Also, whenever the opponent tries to gain buffs while they're fate sealed or staggered, they'll take 50% of his modified attack as energy damage. This is a little bit like Symbiote Supremes, where he deals a bit of extra damage in his first phase. I forget what it's called, but it's the it's where he nullifies and he deals damage back to you. It looks like a little stagger symbol. It's the pink one. It's something cunning, I think, but it doesn't matter. It's a bit like that. As Supreme passives, this is his main mechanic. Whenever he nullifies, staggers, or fate seals a buff, he's going to gain a Supreme passive. These Supreme passives, they don't do much aside from just generate some power for him, which is quite nice. They do some stuff on special attacks, but in terms of basic attacks, the only thing they'll kind of help with is power gain. So they generate 33.33% max power every 9 seconds. This is roughly equivalent to a bar of power every 9 seconds, which is pretty nice. In addition to his combat power rate and his other stuff that we'll talk about in his kit, he's able to generate quite a lot of power and cycle specials pretty nicely, which is always fun for any champ, but especially in the Mystic class as well. On basic attacks, he's going to pause all stagger effects, so that's really good for just keeping up that consistent buff control. His combo enders, so that's mediums, lights, and heavies. The second medium, the fourth light, and heavy attack, it'll pause Fate Seal for 1 second. So he gets Fate Seal on the special 3, and also via his SIG ability, and that's just really nice to keep those active for a bit longer. Also, if he uses a basic attack to intercept the opponent, he nullifies a buff. Simple as that. He just nullifies on intercepts, which is fantastic. Just having that on-demand nullify is really great. Looking at heavy attacks next, he places a stagger on the opponent for 3 seconds, and this can stack to 2. So this is great if you don't have a buff that's triggering now. You want to kind of save it for later. You can kind of use a stagger from a heavy attack instead of intercepting, and build those staggers up a bit. And then when the buffs trigger, they'll just get removed and you gain a Supreme passive anyway. So the heavy attacks are really nice to keep some variety in the buff control that you get. On the last hit of special attacks, each Supreme passive will steal 5% of max power from the opponent, and he'll gain a third of what was stolen. So what does this mean? So if you have 5 Supreme passives, which is the max, then you're gonna steal 25% max power. That's equivalent to around about 75% of a bar of power. And so what that means is if they're at 3 bars, they'll be pushed down to about 2.25 bars, and then you'll steal a third of what was stolen. So you'll steal about a quarter of a bar back. And this is the same because it's based on max power, not current power, it's the same no matter when you use it, apart from if they're at no power. If they have at least some power, you're going to steal a lot of it, and then you're just going to get some back. Now, the reason this isn't higher, this is kind of low for power steal, is because he already has this really great power generation, this passive power generation. So I didn't want to make it too much power gain in addition to something like Mystic Dispersion as well. So it's not that much power gain, but it is still noticeable, and it's something to note, I guess. Also, he's going to remove all supreme passives from either champion after special attacks. That's just so that he, if you have that constantly, then he just gains power like all the time, in addition to the power steal and all other effects that he gets as well. So I just made it so that it will remove it after special attacks, so you've got to keep building them up, nullifying stuff. But if you play it right, you can keep the supreme passives for quite a while and then just cycle special 2s. Our next point here is special attack 1. Whenever you trigger the special, the opponent will gain a fury buff, and that can either be nullified with the special 1 on the second hit, or you can stagger it, or you can fate seal it even as well, and that'll give the various effects like the extra energy damage, or it'll give you a supreme passive, stuff like that, which will also lead to the power steal. So one thing I like about his kit that I've made is that each ability kind of bounces off each other. So as long as one thing works, lots of things work together, and it's kind of got a nice flow with it, which I really like about champions. Next here, special attack 2. Whenever you trigger the special, you get a fury passive for each supreme passive and buff active on either champion. So if they have buffs, if you have buffs, if they have supreme passives, you have supreme passives, doesn't matter. They'll all be combined to create fury passives, which max out of 10 stacks, and they grant 700 attack rating for 10 seconds. So that means if you get max damage, if they're cooperative and they gain buffs, or they have lots of supreme passives, then you're going to gain up to 7,000 additional attack rating, which is really nice. If you're wondering what that's kind of comparable to, I believe Namor's is around about 8,500 on a 565, or it might be a bit closer to 9,000. I can't exactly remember the number, but it's between like 7 and 9,000, I'm pretty sure. So it's around about that. It's quite a lot of attack, but remember, that's max. Absolute maximum damage. You have to have the opponent generating buffs or having supreme passives on them for that to be as effective as it is. The good thing though is that these furies are actually paused for 2 seconds whenever a buff is removed by an alpha, stagger, or fate seal. So again, it's that idea of buff control, which will allow you to keep the furies on for longer. Because of its natural power gain from the supreme passives and the power steal, you can recycle special 2s quite a bit. It's not going to be as seamless or as good as something like Professor X or someone with a mutant power, someone with a mystic power boost, but it's still good enough to where you could fire off a special 2 pretty consistently throughout a fight. The next 2 points I really like as well. Each hit of the special 2 is going to nullify 3 buffs, so that means it nullifies 9 buffs in total because there's 3 hits. Also, he's going to lifesteal for 20% of the damage dealt, and this has a limit of 10% max health per hit. So from this special 2, from a single special 2, he can heal a maximum of 30% of his max health. Now, some of you might think that's overpowered, some of you might think that's not enough, but here's why I think it's good. If you consider someone like Clairvoyant, she's a very sustainable champion. Now, without suicides, you'd probably get around about 15 to 20% health maybe, but if you have suicides, it's probably closer to like 35 to 50%, depending on crit RNG and stuff. Doctor Strange, he is a bit dependent on crit RNG, but it's maximum 10%. So you get pretty much a consistent 30% each time, which I think is fair, especially considering that he can usually spam specials more than Clairvoyant will be able to, even in immunity matchups usually, because then you got to expel those Clairvoyant's charges to keep getting the power. Whereas Doctor Strange, he has the passive power gain, the power steal again, he has Mystic Dispersion, along with Claire has Mystic Dispersion as well, but I think Doctor Strange is going to be able to recycle special attacks much more quickly. So his lifesteal is probably more consistent, I would say, than Claire's at the moment. His special attack 3 will place a 15-second fate seal. Excellent for controlling buffs because they just can't gain buffs, and then you can pause that with the combo enders as well, which is nice. Next up here, we've got his Sig ability. This, I would say, it's not needed, but it definitely does help him quite a bit in those matchups where you can't gain buffs. I would say, like, if you're just using him for a heavy buff matchup, does not need to be awakened. If you're using him for like a path clear, like with like a mixture of champions and nodes that some have buffs, some don't have buffs, or none of them have buffs, then I'd say awakening is really beneficial for him. So first up, his special attacks will place a 3-second Fate Seal once they finish. So you throw special 1, after that last hit connects, and you get the power seal and stuff, it will apply the Fate Seal to them for 3 seconds. And once more, you can pause it with the combo enders, which is nice, but the important thing is that it places a Fate Seal after every special attack. So again, more buff control, fantastic. If you have something like Footloose, you can throw a special, it'll apply the Fate Seal. If they then throw a special, Footloose will be cancelled out. That's just an example. In addition to all the other Fate Seals, staggers, and nullifiers that he has in his kit, that's just another thing to add on top of it to make it even more consistent and reliable when you're trying to nullify buffs. Now this one is quite interesting, this next point. His light attacks are actually going to have a chance to place a Fury buff. It's 20 to 50% based on SIG level, so that means that at SIG 1, he has a 20% chance per light attack. So generally you can usually get it in 1 to 2 combos, and it's non-stacking. And why is this Fury buff important if it does no damage? So remember, it's the opponent that gains it. If the opponent gains it, that means 2 things. 1, you can nullify it, so you get supreme passive, and 2, this note here, for each buff active on either champion. So you can get your Furies better in a more effective way with this. The last point here is one of my favorites. It's one of the reasons I love Doctor Strange so much currently, or love, I should say. I don't really like him anymore, but I used to love him before he got nerfed, and that's his counterspell. This is a little bit similar. Whenever the opponent gains a buff, they have a 75 to 85% chance to nullify it and replace it with a supreme passive. So not only is it an auto nullify, flat out, but it also gives them a supreme passive as well. Now, supreme passives on the opponent don't have any effect, but they can stack indefinitely, and they count towards this part of his special 2. So the Fury buffs, the supreme passives, no matter if they get nullified or not, it's gonna keep counting towards the special 2. Now the great thing is that because these are indefinite, it just means that you're gonna get way more consistent damage from this, especially if they don't constantly trigger buffs or you get unlucky with the light attacks, Fury buff. So that's really nice for consistent damage. But yeah, that's going to be it today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this buff breakdown that I made. I really would like to see something like this. I think he's really cool. He's got loads of buff control, like stacked buff control, which I really love, because I feel like right now I don't have too many buff controls in my kit, so I'm like really, really solid buff controllers in my own roster. And I just feel like he'd be insane for buff control. And then also he has some nice power steal. He has some other like small things like the energy resistance and the ability to power it and stuff, but overall it's really that nullify, and yeah, that's nice. The life steal is great as well. I love life steal, and the damage would probably be pretty decent, but the nullify and the mystic utility that he has would be quite effective, I would think. But anyway, yeah, that's gonna be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a great day.